Welcome to our training on Release 900-15. This training is intended for internal Unitrends employees. Dash 15 is an incremental release bringing numerous patches as well as a few new important features to the current user interface. Just for reference, please refrain from using the pre-release codename Satori when working with customers. We should be referring to this as our current UI and/or the legacy UI, depending on which UI you're in. First, let's highlight the major release points. Up front and center, the large improvement is bringing tape support natively into the current UI. This eliminates the need to access the legacy UI for backup copies on units that support the current UI. Tape support is now available in the new UI with all the features the new UI already included, which makes creating complex archive schedules with greater selective object granularity even easier. Also on the backup copy job creation page for jobs other than tape, you can now test to see if your selections will fit on the archive target selected. When trying to create a job, we now show mouse over tooltips for VMs and databases indicating their supported models. This is huge. For VMs, it's full or all. For SQL, it's simple, full, or bulk log shows up. Now, these only show up in the scheduler, not in the Protect tab or other locations, only in the scheduler. When a job is active in the dashboard, hovering over it will now indicate estimated completion date or time if it's available. In the Jobs Manager, you can now select multiple jobs to concurrently enable or disable. The About dialog has been expanded with a few more relevant details too. There have been a lot of improvements to reports, especially the backup history report. Now it makes it even more convenient to get prior backup summary information right from that report. And also a new file level contents details button has been added. It's also now possible to specify the from email address to come from reports at the domain instead of just reports at the appliance host name. The best reference for customer resolved defects in 900-15 is the CRD. Individual articles will be added to the KB system on these issues as well. But we want to cover just a few quickly that might be common hot points. All of these issues are resolved by updating to Dash 15. This is just a subset of what's in the CRD and a tiny fraction of what's patched in this release. Please review all available resources in addition to this list. Archive issues were encountered under prior releases related to a single job spanning multiple tapes. Attempts to import rendered errors related to either failure to identify the encryption header or indication that the tapes were not created by Unitrends. Prior tapes affected can be imported properly after the patch. A separate issue that would corrupt file header information on select archive restores from an archive that is both encrypted and compressed also was addressed. Cloud hook operations on a very large individual backup, 2 terabytes or larger, were impacted by 2 issues. In one case, individual metadata errors where connectivity was interrupted in a transfer, or where S3 processes may delete files from the root but not flush. Now, this not flushing the data causes the root to appear 100% full. The S3 file system prior to /temp has been sublinked to /backup/cloud cache as of Cloud Admin 1.54 to resolve this issue. An odd issue with the Schedule API in the new UI would cause schedules created for times tomorrow that are before times today not to get saved. An example is if it's currently 4 p.m. today and you set a schedule to run at 6 a.m., noon, and 6 p.m. tomorrow, the 6 p.m. time only will run today. The 6 a.m. and 3 p.m. times before that, they'll not be saved. All right, this is corrected in this new release. Now, prior customers might receive the notice, BP backup data of the sparse and dedupe file is not supported when backing up sparse files from within a Windows native deduplicated file system. Now, this has been addressed and these files will now back up properly as well too. For replication, some issues related to a memory leak on targets have been fixed. An OpenVPN issue that prevented the connection from completely resetting in certain disruption scenarios was addressed. And some issues related to backups might not replicate to a C5 appliance from a C6 appliance were fixed. Scheduling issues for cold copies were also addressed where some hypervisors and Windows Server assets might not be displayed in a saved schedule. A critical DevMon issue was discovered and resolved related to a memory leak that would result in jobs not being purged or launched. Core dumps might be associated with those as well too. Now, once again, this has been resolved. A WinIR issue where one backup in a chain may be missing metadata information that could cause the virtual client to queue or mark the guest as halted was resolved. Now, after this patch, resolving the halted state can be done by running a new full or synthetic one that contains the metadata backup. Now, the virtual candidate will regenerate at that point without having to be recreated all from scratch. On UEBs where the database has been moved to the LV_database using the database move scripts, further logical expansion of the stateless partition would fail. The new CMC expand LVM patch resolves this issue and was included in this release as well. Now, Hyper-V backups account properly for a VHD growing over time, but they didn't account for a VHD that might be resized to a smaller size in the future. Now, this is now handled properly, but a new network full is required to reset the proper disk size. Now, existing affected synthetics cannot be used to recover the machine due to this defect. Most backups will recover. It is somewhat uncommon for a VHD to get smaller over time, but this has been resolved. The last one here is when sending a test email in the new UI, the email recipients would be removed from the configuration preventing emails from sending. This has also been fixed. Once again, the major release point in the new UI is tape support. Now, when creating a new backup copy job, the system will scan for available devices and configured tape devices will be displayed. These devices can be configured in the new UI under backup copy targets on the appliance configuration page. Once again, we're going to take a look at that here in a demo in a few minutes. Now, options supported for tape are properly limited versus the options that apply to disk or NAS, simplifying these options, and also enforcing required fields like slots to be completed when required. Like the options like the purge option is not present when you're working with tape. So let's do a run through of how to add and configure a tape device in the current UI and set up a job. So we're going to start on the configuration page for a 943. Now, of course, tape is only supported on Recovery Series rack appliances and UEB installable for Linux. Virtual UEB appliances, they don't support tape due to the limitations of the hypervisor. Hyper-V and Zen, they've never supported it at all. VMware removed support for tape after 4X. Now, backup copy targets, including both hot and cold, are configured under the appropriate config tab. You'll note configured replication targets or NAS targets are visible. Disk targets and tape targets are not visible even if connected. The visible capacity of disk devices will be seen for active NAS targets, but of course that can only be confirmed by mounting disk devices, and tape can't report capacity as there's not formatted file system to report free space of a tape. To see this, we need to scan for media. Scanning for media may take some time depending on the number of connected devices, tape slot count, and the presence of a barcode support or not. When done, the list will refresh. We've connected an RxDA as well as a tape changer containing a single tape drive. Capacity is only available once again when mounted. Once again, that tape has no capacity. Online has another application for tape. Only a single jukebox and drive can be online at one time. If multiple drives are connected to a single jukebox, all but one must be disabled. Switching between them can be done manually if necessary, but Unitrends only ever uses one drive in a jukebox, so typically changing drives is only needed when a drive fails. Selecting the changer, we can see some properties. This rescans for connected tapes, and depending on the jukebox size, the configuration, this could take some time. We can see the slots permissions for this device. To use all slots, simply enter all, or enter the first and last as arranged. We can also see what slots have tapes, some of which might have readable barcodes. We will know the barcode number from the drive information. Now, how this process has not changed from prior releases, but this new UI is more visually appealing. The individual drive also has important configuration. Most importantly is the parent changer configuration. This is the same as the legacy UI. Select the applicable changer and the parent changer ID number for the drive. Some trial and errors is needed with some vendors for drive ID, but it's commonly 1 or 0. And in some rare cases, we've seen 2, 3, or even 4. The serial number is displayed above to make it easy to reference. And the use unlabeled tapes option is typically used, but not the default. This setting, of course, causes any unreadable tape found to be auto-prepared on load. If this is not checked, tapes have to be manually prepared by selecting the changer, and by clicking the prepare button, you see grayed out at the bottom of the screen here. So that's it for configuration, very simple. Typical issues in resolving setting up a new jukebox are exactly the same as the legacy UI. All the backend commands and reports are the same. This is just a new UI to access it. So let's see what's changed in creating a job since we've added tape to the new UI. First, we want to go to Jobs and create a new backup copy job. Now, one advancement in the new UI already brought us versus the legacy was the ability to easily browse the tree and create a single archive job containing individual SQL clients, VMs, and other assets in single job. And it provided greater granularity for database archiving beyond the all option in the legacy UI. Now, this is just a quick demo, so we'll select this SQL parent to add to the job. Now, note it's easy to select an object to have it highlighted in the inventory pane on the other side. So if this job has hundreds of included things sorted by name, it's easy to click and find it in its parent object to remove them later on if needed. Now, clicking Next scans for backup targets, and when creating a new job, all the standard options are initially shown. In 900-15, we've also reintroduced the test button for space confirmation for archive. Testing against a disk device tells us if the selection on the prior screen will fit as archived onto the selected device or not. Now, the output examines the report size based on encryption, compression, etc. to provide a range versus the free space on the target. Now, if overwrite is selected, then it's versus the size of the target instead. Now let's select the tape target. Note, the only change is shown, not the individual drive, as the only way to write that drive is via the changer configure. If this was a standalone drive with no changer, it would show up on its own. Now it quickly pulls the changer settings from the database so you can specify the slots. Slot entry is required here. This can be subset of the slots. The changer notes are available or all. If you enter slots that are invalid, it will tell you. Note the system will not display the purge options for tape since the feature cannot apply to tape. Once again, we talked about that earlier. Also note the test button is gone. Tape has a variable size, so testing is not very valid. But now to see how much data you selected to archive to estimate tape, test using a disk device. Now just to point out as well, on-demand jobs don't get a unique job title. Only scheduled jobs do. So we've selected a tape device in the slots, and now we'll pick some times to run and we'll save this schedule. Now we're going to pick a date in the future and options we need. Don't forget to give yourself a unique title for the job, right? And there's our new tape job in the UI Jobs Manager with the next run date indicated. Now let's check out some reporting changes related to tape 2 as well. We got backup copies of all kinds are reported under the backup copies report section now. The backup copy cold targets report will list clients and where they've been archived to. This report is run by a range. Note the 24-hour report only includes hot copies to the appliance targets. For tape, you need the cold target report. Those are two separate reports. This report is filterable and lists similar to the backup history report. And when you're looking to recover a prior archive, you'll have the tape label used or serial number of the media, which would be our internal serial number for tapes or barcodes. Once again, it is filterable, so if you have a device, you know what you know on it, you can filter it that way. And of course, filtering by app or client name works as well too, as do multi-column sorts, if you need to shift and click additional columns around. Now, barcodes are only listed where used, but easily as well sort on that column or hide it from the report if you know you don't use them or you need them. Job names used for the archive is also here. Note in 900-15 that if job was used prior but the job itself since has been removed from the job manager, we'll reflect it here. That if the parent job schedule is deleted accordingly. That's one of the defects also fixed in this release. Now, checking through recent jobs, you can get limited information on a job. You can scroll through or filter once again this list to find your reference tape job. Now, unfortunately, the only job details provided here are the total backup successfully copied to the media. It should be noted that this is only the most recent jobs completed. Even if you set a large job range, this report only reports the most current cold copy of each target for each protected asset. Now, to find older archives, you'll need to check the Recovery tab and set your date range back. We're going to cover that one in a little bit too. Now, back to the Configuration tab. Just to repeat, tape devices are located in the Appliance Backup Copy Target section. You can't add them. They're scanned for using Scan for Media, once again. They will not persist on the screen. They need to be scanned for each time. They'll also be scanned for separately when configuring a job, too. Now, we do remember the configuration settings in the database, but they're not presented here otherwise. So we have drives and we have jobs. Let's run through a few things on how to see them and how to restore them. To recover tape data, it's the same as NAS or disk archives. Simply come over to the Recovery tab, and notice by default we only show successful backups within the last 7 days. Now in the filter area to the right, we show that date range and all types of backups, but backup copies are not included in the filter scope by default. You can see a list of all the jobs we have on disk, and you should verify the data they want to recover. Make sure it's not already imported first. Then to recover the cold copies, you need to enable that filter. Here, I'll show you just the cold copies, but you could show backups and copies at the same time if you like. Now ensure you click the filter button to refresh. If you expand the view and mouse over some of the backups, we can see what media type that were archived in a pop-up. You can change the date range and rescan for copies we know about. Remember, like the legacy UI, if tape or disk has been overwritten, that prior historical record, it's also removed from the UI. You can only see records this appliance knows about, and they have not been overwritten yet. If you noted prior that there were archive failures in the jobs history, but we do not itemize failed archives in the Recovery tab like we do failed backups. A failed backup may be skipped files or encountered other issues, but it's functionally a complete CTAR file. And the data that was backed up could be recovered. However, with archives, if the copy failed, we do not have a complete CTAR file, so the recovery is impossible from those, and there's no way to display them for that reason. Now, selecting a job, you can import it or recover the files. If you recover the files from a backup copy, that does not support that function, like a VM backup or system state. There won't be a file listing. Now, if you try to import unsupported file types, like system state, it will also refuse it. Now, if we pick a protected asset backup that can be imported, we'll be presented with some basic details about that job. We have the storage target or tape drive information, and most importantly, we have the backup copy date. If you need this to determine the tape serial number or barcode to pull, all we have here is the label. If you import from here and did not already know what types to insert in your jukebox, the import will fail, and it'll tell you that point specifically which barcodes or serial numbers you're missing, but unfortunately not before then. So we need to find that elsewhere. Note down the backup copy date in this case. Now, job reports might have this if it was a recent copy, but this is limited to just the last 7 days once again. There is no way to update this limitation. This report is just capped at 7 days, so we need to look elsewhere. Now, back to our backup copy, cold copy report, we can enter the date from the copy operation and generate the report. From here, we can see the copies created on that day, and we do have a barcode and serial columns here that we can sort through and locate the appropriate serial number before attempting to restore that job, so we don't have to go through that failure. And you can see the target and filter by archive device if you have several, and also filter by client or any other column. Now, these jobs were done without barcode tape, so we have serial numbers, and hopefully they kept copies of their email archive reports to match up for those serial numbers on the tapes themselves. Now, if they don't have barcodes, they also need to remember what specific slots each tape was in. It's also noted in the archive email report. Now, that information is not in our database anywhere. Now, let's switch to the legacy UI and see some differences still present there. Now, here's the archive status screen. You can see in the legacy UI that we record archive jobs by set. We also itemize each client in that job individually. Now, that functionality is not present in the new UI with this release. Now, future enhancements are pending for that, so keep on the lookout. This view does have longer history that can be reviewed and may be more flexible from search perspective. Now, additionally, from this view, we can get detailed information by clicking an individual archive job. You can also get more detailed information about the archive job set, including all the serial numbers used, the elapsed time for the entire job run instead of the individual clients. And once you have the information you need, and the proper tapes loaded, it's recommended that you switch back to the new UI and locate the client in the Recovery tab and perform the restore from within the new UI from there. Just to review some things about tape support while we're on the topic, barcoded tapes can be placed in any slot in the jukebox when the appliance already has record of them. When importing tapes with barcodes to new appliance, the first tape in the set should be in the first slot. Now, tapes without barcodes must be placed in their original slots. This is critical when removing tapes from a jukebox to note clearly their set, the date of the job, and the slot IDs. Now, a proper procedure for labeling these tapes manually is critical. More detailed information about this is included in the admin guide. When connecting tape drive to a Unitrends appliance, typical jukeboxes may have multiple tape head units. We can only use one of those, and it must be the master device for the juke that controls the arm. Only a single unit should be online in the jukebox if the jukebox has the option to disable drives that are not in use to avoid confusion. If the device that is online is not the controller for the picker arm, we will be unable to change or move those tapes. Now, most tape troubleshooting revolves around ensuring the correct serial number drive is properly seen, ensuring those drives do not have control of the picker arm, and ensuring their SCSI IDs are correct. Common commands for troubleshooting tape and system configuration are located in the Support Lunch and Learn folder on the Corp FS Cola in the Working with Tape Training folder. There's a bunch of other new features to review, so let's see a few of those. Next, we'll look at a simple new feature. We can now mouse over to see backup types supported by database and VMs. This is huge. Now, opening a new backup job is where this is seen. So selecting a SQL backup type and locating a SQL database, you can now easily see which databases are in the recovery mode. Now, prior, if you added simple databases to transaction schedules, it would refuse to save. Prior, if you added simple mode databases to a transactional schedule, it would refuse to save them. But now it's easier to see which support that model directly. Full is all modes. Simple is full, differential only. We can do the same for VMware schedules. All indicates all modes are supported. Full indicates a VM that supports full only modes, typically because the hardware level is not at least hardware level 7. Simple enough. Additional mouse over additions include that moving over the progress bar in the active job tab or in the dashboard will display estimated time for the completion. Now, this applies to replication jobs, hot copies, where this estimate exists. We do not calculate time estimates for local backups. You can see now also multi-select jobs in the job manager to enable and disable multiple at a time. Shift-click does not apply here, but there's an all checkbox to select and deselect all at the top of the selection column. This makes it easier to enable and disable more jobs at once. Some additional information was added to the About dialog in Release-15. This includes the appliance IP address, the install date, the browser type, screen resolution, the appliance type, processor and cache, processor frequency and MAC address. These options may avoid more command line access and simplify the system review. This may be valuable information, especially as it applies to UEB deployment scaling for CPU and RAM, as it's much simpler to collect this information here versus having to go to the command line. The backup report entry has been greatly improved, bringing it on par with details prior to the recovery console only. Additional details about the backup are fully provided, not just the summary output anymore. And the full backup output report is included too. Additionally, the missing details button has finally been brought over to the new UI, so you can now click on any backup in the recovery history report and see everything needed about that job, and then also see the complete file list of files contained in the file level backups. Now, this list is sortable by size or name and also exportable to CSV for more in-depth analysis too. If you use these features in the RC, they'll be extremely familiar to you. Here you can see all files in the backup, one page of 5,000 files at a time, including their sizes. You can only sort each page, not the entire file output, so keep that in mind. Now, we're talking about browsing for files. There's been some clarity added to the Browsing Files wizard. In the legacy UI, Flash would allow us to display some files in the tree, and as the user scrolled, they could load more and more files, automatically expanding the displayed within. Unfortunately, the Java components used in the new HTML5 UI do not allow that process to be replicated. Now, this is a limitation of the Java class outright, not our ability to code it. So in expanding to browse a larger list of files in a directory, we'll display the first 200 files in that path only now. If a user needs to restore individual files beyond this scope, they'll have to leverage the Search for Files wizards using the file wildcards or regular expressions. They may be limited to restoring the entire folder to acquire objects within. Now, folders are shown in line with context, so if more than 200 files and folders are intermixed in the same parent folder, it may not be possible to browse to some deeper levels. Now, however, it is possible to search for both files and folders in the search files restore context, so if they know a particular lower level folder they wish to recover, they cannot browse to it. They can still readily locate the restore using the search process. Now, a feature request that came from customers to have the daily appliance reports come from their own domain instead of the appliance host. And development has added a master INI value to choose the domain line from the host configuration for the appliance to append in the email string, eliminating that host name. Now, some mail servers require this based on security restrictions. Now, this will only work for some mail servers. Some systems like Gmail may alter what we send further outside of our control. This only impacts the daily reports sent by cron. Notification reports are not changed at this time to support this feature. No send mail modifications are made either. The last one here is the speed columns now available in the backup history report, as well as the backup copy hot targets report for replication throughput. The capacity report is improved as well, adding missing fields for instant recovery space used and available capacity space. The weekly status report is also new to the UI, providing a similar experience to the email report, showing 7 prior days of backups and copy status for each. Now, some other minor UI improvements are also called out in the public release notes. The release notes for this release can be located in the support portal, as well as attached in the LMS system along with this training content.